Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Roseo. Thank you so much for tuning into this talk. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the evolution of campus sustainability at the University of Ottawa. I'm going to be reviewing a little bit about what I've seen over the last decade or so on campus in terms of the social, economic, and environmental evolution of the University of Ottawa. So the University of Ottawa's history reaches back to 1848 when it was first created. I'm not going to be reaching quite that far back. I don't think you have to go that far to see some of the big changes that have happened here on campus. But I do want to acknowledge that the university has had a very distinct culture over the years, including a lot of work towards the idea of conservation and environmentalism. But before I get started talking about the university, I really want to take a moment to talk about these two women. They're going to kind of lay out the archetype of how I want to structure this presentation. So first, Gro Brundtland. She was the Prime Minister of Norway. She was the Director General of the World Health Organization. She created the Brundtland Commission, which famously defined sustainability for the first time. What was very incredible about her work was that she was working at a time when the concepts and ideas around sustainability were still floating around, a little nebulous, and she was able to marry the environment and social movements together to be able to say these two things are connected, and caring about the environment is caring about people. And then I want to contrast that with Greta Thunberg. So Greta Thunberg, a 17-year-old Swedish activist taking the world by storm with her impassioned speeches about how we need to take action now. It's really interesting. During Gro Brundtland's time, she was kind of confined in a world where people didn't quite understand sustainability, and the tools available to her were very much tools of regulation and working with large organizations to create commissions and reports that set out goals. Contrast that against Greta Thunberg. She's living in a time when we've known about these solutions for a long time. Climate change is undeniable. The impacts are being seen, and yet there's no action. And so she represents a generation frustrated by this inaction and demanding change. So during my talk, I really want to look at the university as it was in the past and how it's dealing with the idea of this new movement, this new kinetic energy to try to have action taken on the environment. So if you can believe it, these are plans for the original University of Ottawa. It's interesting, it very much resembles a traditional Capitol building you'd see perhaps in the United States or something. But that was the plan for the university at one point. It wasn't very much in line with what the Oblate Fathers wanted in terms of living a more simplistic lifestyle and so forth. So of course these plans never really came to fruition. But it's interesting to see where the university started and where we've gone to. So if we're going to talk about sustainability and the environment, then we have to talk about use of space. So this graph shows, between 93 and this year, the use of space by the University of Ottawa, starting at a little around 350,000 square meters of space and jumping up past 600,000 square meters of space. So, in the last 30 years, the university has basically doubled in size. Now, this is important because if we're talking about doubling in size, that usually translates to something like a doubling of resources. Now, we know that it's not a perfect relationship, but we do know that as you grow, there is a relationship that says you will use more resources. And as the university has grown, we have started to use more resources. And this has meant that we've had to find interesting ways to be better with our resources. not just from the point of view of, it might be too expensive and so forth, but also given the fact the University of Ottawa is unique from a lot of other institutions. It's a landlocked university from the point of view of it wasn't like a large land endowment given and said, spread out as much as you like. It was a small area given and said, like, and it's understood, sorry, that if the university wants to grow, it needs to buy up territories beside it. And so that's made it a lot more difficult for the university to expand. So we absolutely cannot have discussion about sustainability today without acknowledging climate change. Climate change is easily the largest environmental issue on the planet today. It is quickly seeping its way into a lot of social issues. And climate change is driven by primarily our use of energy. So the more energy we use, the more CO2 we produce because of the way that our energy networks are created today. The University of Ottawa is actually pretty lucky. Some forward-thinking engineers decades ago determined that the University of Ottawa should be a district heating and cooling network. So basically what that means is that we have a central power plant, as you can see in the center of this slide, that produces energy centrally and shares it with the buildings around the campus. This heat is produced inside the plant and carried to the buildings through hot water pipes underneath the campus. It's designed in a way that as a building gets warm, or too warm, it can dump its heat back into the system and share that with the next building. And in the summertime, this whole thing can be reversed in the sense that we can just distribute cold water to all the buildings to remove heat. So it acts as an air conditioner. What's really innovative about the buildings here on campus is that they have the ability to not only share their heat in the direction of this loop, but they also have the ability to share their heat between particular buildings. So one building doesn't necessarily have to be beside another one in order to share its excess heat if it happens to have some. So how does a building get too much heat? Recently the University of Ottawa has started embarking on a series of deep energy retrofits in our buildings. It's a program we call Eco-Prosperity, because not only do we save a lot of energy from these programs, which reduces our energy consumption and our CO2 production, but we also end up saving a lot of money. So it makes sense to do this. The way it kind of works is simple. A building such as this one here, this is our representation of our library, the Morissette Library. A building like this basically generates heat just because of its metabolic activity. So the people, the computers inside the building, they all generate heat, and that heat kind of floats up to the roof of the building. Warm air rises. And what we do is we create these heat pumps that capture that heat and bring it back down into the building so it can be reused again. The deep energy retrofit that we did in the Morissette Library ended up reducing our electrical consumption by 33%, and it reduced our heat consumption by 106%. And so when we say it's more than 100%, basically what that means is we could turn the building on at the start of the day to get it a little heated, and then the people and the equipment inside the building would quickly raise that temperature up to more heat than was required inside the building, and thus we could share that heat with other buildings. This has helped move us to a point today where we can start looking at the idea of using alternative forms of energy collection on our campus. So the main power plant is run by natural gas, and of course natural gas creates greenhouse gases. So we're exploring the idea of finding our energy from other sources. This is very important that we look for our renewable energies from solar panels or geothermal, all that. It's very important that we start with our energy reduction first, because if we tried to use our energy consumption at today's levels and just throw some solar panels on the campus, we basically wouldn't have enough surface area to cover with solar panels because we just use too much energy. So we need to get more efficient, And then we can start looking to the future where we can add a lot more of these new technologies in order to reduce our consumption. So this will help us deal with a lot of our building energy related consumption. So on this slide, what you can see here are the different scopes of greenhouse gas emissions. Scope 1 of greenhouse gas emissions is everything that you kind of burn yourself. So, we have a boiler, we use natural gas. That natural gas we burn off, we collect the heat, and that creates greenhouse gas emissions. And that's about 20,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions a year. There's another form of greenhouse gas emissions called Scope 2. Now, this is energy that we're buying from someone else. So someone else is making the energy, and we're just using it. So we didn't create the emissions associated with it, but we are buying that product. So in a way, we are indirectly responsible for it. So these are called Scope 2 emissions, and some people refer to them as indirect emissions. And this includes things like if you buy steam from a different power plant or electricity and so forth. Now, these are important, and we've been focusing on these a lot, but in the future, we have to start looking at the other scope. So there is another scope of emissions called Scope 3, and Scope 3 is basically everything else. So the amount of greenhouse gas emissions created when someone commutes to the campus, or if someone flies to a conference, or even the amount of energy it takes to throw and recycle our waste. That's all included in Scope 3. And on this slide, you can see some scopes in kind of these transparent sort of circles where we're not even sure exactly how many emissions are created with those. So things like the amount of greenhouse gas emissions associated with building a new laboratory or something on campus, or the emissions related to the purchasing of paper, how it gets to us, what kind of vehicles are used, the loss of a tree in the forest so that we can make this paper or something like that. It's quite large, and we're only just now starting to look at how we are going to tackle that problem. Because even if we deal with our Scope 1 and 2 emissions, which are more related to what we do, we're not addressing the bigger problem, which is the emissions related to our activities. So in our last slide, we saw how our commuting emissions were so high, how they were such a big part of our greenhouse gas emissions portfolio. And that makes sense because a lot of people require a vehicle to move around. And this is a really important issue. A lot of people overlook the importance of transit, but in 2015, the New York Times highlighted some research done by two Harvard researchers who spoke about the importance of neighborhoods and intergenerational mobility, and basically highlighting how transit was important in escaping the poverty cycle. The more access you have to transit, the more likely you are to escape the poverty cycle. Now, at the University of Ottawa, we're so lucky. We are located along the Transitway, which was created a long time ago in response to the idea that one day the city of Ottawa would have a train system going right through the core, and how that would be important. But at the time, the city didn't have the capital to build that train, so they built some roads and put some buses on it, and that held as kind of a placeholder until the train could get built. So at the university, we're very lucky because we are serviced now by this train station, and we've become a hub for transit. So when we break it down and we look at our modal share, if we look at how people come to campus, we see that there's actually a huge portion of our population who comes by public transit, so by buses and the train. And I guess followed by that, we have a lot of people walking, which is great because we're in a dense neighborhood. So a lot of people have that ability, and we have residences on campus. And then after that, we see that single occupancy vehicles are still quite high. So single occupancy vehicle is, when one person is in a car alone. And we really want to tackle that because although public transportation represents the bulk of our emissions, so we have a little more than 26,000 people generating almost 20,000 tons of CO2. When you contrast that to driving alone, where we have about 7,500 people generating almost 13,000 greenhouse gas emissions, we can see that the amount of greenhouse gas emissions created per person is a lot less. But beyond that, cars take a lot of space. They require parking, they generate a lot of noise, and they pollute the air. So what we want to try to do at the university is really promote active transportation. So those other forms, those alternative forms of transportation. So definitely cycling and walking, and so forth. And then, trying to work on other programs that reduce the amount of people or the amount of single occupancy vehicles with programs like carpooling and things like that. The university has embarked on a lot of programs to be able to get people out of cars. Programs like the UPass and all the cycling infrastructure that's been put into place is very important. But the university has also been putting a lot of emphasis on the idea of the last mile. So the concept that if you do take a car, if you do take trains and everything, you still want to be able to come to a place where you can walk very easily, because that last little piece of your trip is always going to be pedestrian based. Walking from a parking lot to a car or transit station, from a parking lot to your office or a transit station to a classroom, you always need to walk. And so one of the things we've been working on is trying to create a car-free core for the University of Ottawa's campus. If you look at this map here, what you can see is all the dedicated car-related streets on campus in red, and the traditional pathway for pedestrians in green. Now, even this is kind of modern. It was only around 2000 that the university shut down that street called the Grande Allée that kind of cuts its way into campus from like Tabaret to the FSS building. But before that, it was also like a two-way street for cars. And so the university has been trying to work really hard on saying, no, if we want people to be able to feel safe and be able to consider sustainable transportation options, then we need to work on creating a core that is car-free and thus pedestrian forward. So if you look at this map now, what we've been working on is expanding that green area, taking away a lot of places where we'd have traditional cars, traffic driving through all the time, and replacing that with much more pedestrian infrastructure, as well as a pathway for cyclists and pedestrians to go all the way from the main campus to the 200 Lees campus without having to interact with cars. So this is the kind of thing that we feel is really going to help create that sense of safety and really give people a good reason to rely on more sustainable forms of transportation. So in the case of something like transportation, a lot of that is trying to get a lot of people moved in a very efficient way, bringing everyone together. But there are some places we're trying to do the opposite of that. So if you look at this kind of picture, this is like your traditional high school cafeteria. Pour people in, shove as many as you can in one place, give them a generic meal, make sure they get their nutrients, and off they go. This is one of those places where we start to diverge and say our thinking needs to evolve a little bit more. A lot of times people have also looked at food and nutrition and just thought, like, whatever, as long as people are eating, it's fine. But there are some very important social and environmental implications embedded in the food we eat. So what you're seeing here is an example of how the university has been moving away from that, industrial cafeteria and moving more towards meals that are planet and people friendly. This scene here is basically a cooking competition with the chefs at the university that was initiated by the Humane Society to help chefs cook vegan meals. A lot of the idea was that vegan meals are they're great for you and the environment, but they just didn't ever taste quite as good. So this program kind of taught chefs how to make better vegan meals, how to actually properly cook with vegan ingredients, so that they could make the types of meals that people want. And so a lot of times, and what we see now in the dining hall is that people will gravitate towards these vegan and meatless meals because they just taste amazing. And what better way to get people to engage on something than to just give them something that tastes good without everyone having to worry about the kind of impact they're having. More overtly, the university is also working on some programs to make sure that we have standards that improve the sourcing of our food. So, we have MSc certification from the Marine Stewardship Council for the fish we're capturing. But one of the big programs we've also been looking at is Fair Campus certification. So the University of Ottawa was the 7th fair trade campus in Canada, which basically means that we're making sure that our coffees and our teas and our chocolates are coming from fair trade sources. In that way, we're able to extend the impact beyond just what's happening on campus and be able to help affect in a positive way the lives of people maybe on the other side of the world. Of course, one of the programs I'm really excited about was a CSA that we brought on campus. It was organized by one of our students. She was able to go and partner up with a farm to bring weekly organic food baskets on campus. Working with fair trade food isn't really that hard because there isn't very much of a price difference. But when we're talking about organic food, that is a lot harder because there is a price difference. And so if we were going to make all the food on campus organic, that would impact people's ability to purchase it. So working with a farm, we could, at a lower price, bring in a bulk amount of food and give people access to that program, whether they wanted to get a basket once a week or once every 2 weeks. It's completely their choice, but we want to make sure that we have those programs available for people to take advantage of. And food has this fantastic rallying ability. It brings people together. So on campus, we don't want to just show people that, we can buy this kind of food. We also offer them the ability to grow this type of food. So we have community gardens on campus that we offer free to staff and students and people in the Sandy Hill community. Recently, we actually created a whole bunch of raised bed gardens, and this initiative was taken on by the University of Ottawa's carpentry team. They were so excited to start building these things and get them out there. If you know anyone who works with their hands, they will tell you they adore the ability to see their craftsmanship, their work go out into the world and do some positive good. Beyond staff, here's a great example of a student project. 2 students who are part of Enactus over the School of Management, they were working on a problem in one of their courses to figure out a way to deliver healthy food to communities up north who don't have a traditional growing season. So they created this product called the Grocer, and the idea was that they would use a recycled freight container to create hydroponic farms that could be shipped up north and allow people to grow their food. It was such a success that we ended up buying a unit here on campus so that we could also grow some food. So the campus is able to grow 5,000 kilograms of its own food every year and deliver that right to the cafeteria. So looking at this being as hyper local as you could possibly be with your food procurement. So I've been talking a lot about our greenhouse gas emissions and our mobility and food. How we can look at the mixing of these social environmental issues, and of course that's naturally going to bring us to waste. I love dealing with waste as a topic. I look at waste as one of the few areas left where, as a person, you can have the ultimate choice about what happens to something. So, it's hard to control the heating in a building or in a classroom. If you're a student, what can you do? You can make a complaint. Maybe something happens. Um, but waste, it's right in your hand. You decide what you're going to do with that can, like whether you want to recycle it or not. Um, and these are some images from the University of Ottawa. This is back in 1995. What you see on the left is our composting system. We had our own worm composter. Very hard to use, but very gratifying in the sense that we could feed these worms and produce our own compost. And on the right you see what used to be our recycling bins. These like big, gigantic, like almost like monstrosities, not very approachable kind of things where you could put your recycling in if you wanted to if you wanted to properly manage your waste. So back in the day, it was these big systems we put everything together. Now we've gotten a lot more personal with how you do your recycling. Working with students, we created these amazing recycling centers to help increase the amount of sorting that people can do on their own. These great centers. They've got clear signage. You can get rid of your liquid if you have a ball or anything. It's all made of from actually sustainable materials. So FSC certified wood. And having these in our buildings is great. We try to put them everywhere we possibly can in order to make sure that people always have the option to recycle and compost. But if we're looking at this, we also have to think about the idea that recycling and composting isn't necessarily the best solution. Definitely recycle and compost, but if you can help reduce the amount of waste you generate in the first place by reusing items and so forth, that's much more important, because if you don't do that kind of thing, you end up a situation like this, where you just produce so much waste that it doesn't matter what kind of solutions you're trying to put in place to deal with it. You can't deal with the deluge. So we're looking forward to programs that help play a role in that reduction and reuse piece. The University of Ottawa, before the pandemic, produced approximately 10,000 disposable coffee cups a day. And in this picture you can see here, this is 250 mugs. So this is like a half hour's worth of coffee cup production on campus. And we're trying to tell people, like, all that could be replaced with just one reusable mug. Assuming you had one coffee a day sort of thing, this is what you could end up saving. And not just from the point of view of waste, but also from the point of view of your own budget. We make sure that on campus we offer a discount anywhere you bring a reusable mug. So this makes sense not only from the environmental point of view, but from just the personal, trying to save a little bit of money side of things. So I'm able to really push the reduction side of things. A while back, we created something called the Free Store, and the Free Store really is the pinnacle of our social and environmental programs. So the way this works is simple. At the end of the year, we collect all the stuff from students who are moving out of residences, the things they don't want anymore, the things they want to donate, the things they can't bring back home with them. And we take that and we clean it, and then we offer it back to students in the community. This program has helped divert about 150 tons of materials, keep it out of landfill, but more importantly, to put it back to use in the hands of other students. So not only are you helping the environment, but every year we're giving away almost approximately $2 million worth of stuff to students so that they can save money and use that for more important items in life, so that they can help pay tuition or defer the costs for textbooks and things like that. And it's not just the direct issue of taking things to landfill. A pair of jeans, for instance, is equivalent to 15,000 liters of water saved. So if you could just recycle one pair of jeans, you're actually making a huge contribution environmentally in a way that's not related just directly to waste. So I'm going to have to cut myself off here because I could just keep going on and on and on. Um, but really, I want to really emphasize the idea of the past, the history moving into the future. How things were done before certainly aren't the ways um, of how we're going to do things now. But understanding the path, understanding that sustainability isn't a destination, but a journey. I think that makes it important because it helps people understand that even if you're just a student on campus and I'm only here temporarily, and what impact can I have, I think it's important to understand that all the programs that I just reviewed and went over were all student-led initiatives. The Grocer, the UPass, these were programs that were created, implemented by students. And so I don't think people should sell themselves short on the impact that they can have, and understanding that this environmental movement really is a social movement, and a social movement is really driven by the people. So anyways, thank you so much. If you want to learn more about what we do here on campus, please feel free to follow us on social media or to send us an email. Thank you so much, and have a great day.